News Alert. Secretary of State Antony Blinken warning the actions of Iran and its militant groups could bring a larger conflict. And as tensions escalate, President Biden enjoyed a walk on the beach with the First Lady after talking on the phone with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Let's bring in Alexandria Hoff live from Rehoboth with the very latest. Do we know, Alex, what they talked about, Bibi and President Biden?
Yeah, we certainly do. And I do want to mention, Griff, that the president has been anything but off the grid while here in Delaware. And of that call with the prime minister, the White House said that President Biden expressed how welcome he is that these first two convoys of aid were able to make it into Gaza. They also said that the president of the leaders, quote, affirmed that there will now be continued flow of this critical assistance into Gaza. The president expressed appreciation for Israel's support in helping to accommodate the release of two American hostages. So the president also spoke with his national security team this morning, Pope Francis as well, plus the leaders of Germany, France, Italy, the UK, and Canada, too. So the president's line here in Delaware, again, was very busy today. Even on that breezy beach walk we were just talking about, the president was on his cell phone during a portion of that. Now, earlier today, Secretary of State Antony Blinken appeared on the Sunday shows discussing the efforts to get the 10 still missing Americans home. How many of them are still alive is painfully unclear.
What we don't know for sure is whether some of the unaccounted for are dead and have simply not been uncovered yet, or whether they're hostage. But we have a pretty strong idea that some number of the 10, at least, are being held in Gaza by Hamas.
Well, the administration has not directly responded to questions on if the U.S. has urged Israel to delay its ground operation into Gaza in order to facilitate the release of hostages first. We did ask the president about that yesterday, Griff, and the president's response was simply, I am talking to the Israelis, which indeed he has with Prime Minister Netanyahu today. We know that the two have spoken at least 8 times since Hamas launched its terrorist attack, Griff.
8 times. Alexandria Hoff, live for us in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. Alex, thank you. Now, there was one thing, and Joey, I'm going to get your reaction to it. And who knew that the rapper 50 Cent was going to weigh into this situation? But he on Instagram was taking a shot at President Biden for the beach photo of him laid out on the beach. You can see there in it, he's calling out saying, "Hey, Joe, get the F up. We in trouble, man."
Yeah, listen, I was looking today, and Ziggy Marley has on his Instagram, "Free Palestine from Hamas." I don't think Ziggy Marley is a right-wing pundit that's gung-ho for Israel. And I think things like this, like 50 Cent the rapper, which, I mean, he's been more active in things than probably people realize. But the point here is this is spanning partisan lines. People see this and they go, look at this atrocity and look what's coming from it. And our country just is laying in wait. We can't do that.
You know, there was a moment on the Sunday shows, Julie, that Margaret Brennan of CBS was really pushing Blinken hard on a ceasefire, and really Blinken, who's pretty measured, we were talking off the air about how sort of stiff he is, he did go a little further in why the answer to that is no. Take a listen here.
Why isn't the U.S. calling for at least a temporary ceasefire?
When I see the pictures of young children who have lost their lives in this conflict of Hamas is making, it hits me, and I know it hits virtually everyone.
So why not ask for at least a temporary pause in the bombing?
Israel has to do everything it can to make sure this doesn't happen again. Freezing things in place where they are now would allow Hamas to remain where it is and to repeat what it's done sometime in the future. No country could accept that.
No country could accept that.
It's very interesting how many U.S. politicians are involved. And I on Twitter, I now X, one of my followers, and I love when our followers actually tweet us some really interesting questions. So I'm going to bring it into the conversation. Don Goddard on Twitter writes about another issue. Why are so many U.S. politicians visiting Israel in the heat of the conflict? Good question. Are they making commitments that are not being disclosed to their constituents?
Well, to answer that question, I think that they want to go over there and see what the situation is on the ground, just in case they have to pass legislation or some kind of war authorization in the future, so they understand what's actually happening there.
Yeah, absolutely. But I wonder also if that makes you wonder, do they trust our president? Because they're getting the word from the president, who's getting the direct word from Benjamin Netanyahu, but they're going there themselves to see it for themselves.
Listen, I fought those two wars that everybody got sold on, WMDs in Iraq. And there were a version of WMDs in Iraq, but not what was presented to Congress.
Right.
They should be skeptical, and they should look for answers.
Absolutely.
We should also have an administration that they feel like they could get real answers from. The office of the president should have learned from what we went through in the early 2000s through just a few years ago.
You know, Joey, you mentioned the two wars you served in. Thank you for doing that for the country. But as we know, if this conflict widens, the U.S. could get drawn in. Here is Wall Street Journal's most recent poll about should U.S. troops possibly be put in an active combat scenario. Now, right now, today, 38% support it, 57% opposed.
The Israelis also oppose U.S. troops getting involved, at least in the theater of Gaza in Israel at this point. But I want to say, you know, Iran is wondering, with all of this U.S. firepower that we are sending on behalf of our allies, if they're going to call our bluff. I mean, if the United States is going to send that much over there and not use it, there are consequences to that too, just like President Biden, or Obama rather, drawing a red line in the sand and not enforcing it. When it comes to this ceasefire talk from people in the media in Washington, D.C. or Hollywood in California who are very far away from the situation, it's very convenient and easy to call for that from here. But there is no appetite for that among the Israelis, and they want the government to take out Hamas like they promised. And that's also something that the government has promised. One more thing. When President Biden is at the beach, when the Secretary of State is saying we're on the verge of possibly a war and the United States potentially getting called in, doesn't look good. He should be at the White House explaining and getting briefed on what's going on.
I think we're going to hear a lot from our viewers on that, and I'm glad Don wrote to you.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting. I love when we interact with them.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.